My name is John Santaferraro, and this is the Digital Analyst, where AI makes sense and digital dominance begins.
The Digital Analyst with John Santaferraro, powered by Insight Jam.
If you tuned in to our last episode of the Digital Analyst, you know that I've put a stake in the sand by saying that 2025 is the year of the AI agent. Generative AI hype is on its way out, and the conversation this year is going to be focused on AI agents and agentic architectures. One of my predictions is that executives in all industries are going to be going back to school in 2025, back to AI school. It's a year when AI literacy should be a top priority for every executive team. With that in mind, I am excited to have Donald Farmer join me on today's podcast. Donald has been educating executives on AI for the last couple of years, especially since the start of the generative AI explosion. And on top of that, Donald is one of the smartest people I know. In just a minute, you will get to draw from his 35 years of experience in analytics and AI. Donald is the principal at TreeHive Strategies, where he advises investors, analytics vendors, and enterprises. He previously led design and innovation teams at Microsoft and Qlik. He is the author of Embedded Analytics and a research fellow at TDWI. He also happens to be the developer of a half-day course called AI Literacy for Executives. And that's the topic of today's podcast, the year that executives go back to school, AI school. So grab a glass of wine or a cup of coffee and join me on my Tuscan farm in the hills between Florence and Lucca for the Digital Analyst. A big digital welcome to Donald Farmer. Donald, it is so good to see you. What a privilege to have you here with us today. Welcome to the Digital Analyst.
Oh, thank you so much, John. It's a great pleasure to be here.
I was trying to figure out, I think we met all the way back when you were working at Microsoft and I was at HP, and that seems like a lifetime ago.
Oh my goodness, yes, yeah. I think you're right. I think it was quite a long time ago, and it's been great knowing you ever since.
Yeah. I'm so excited you're here because we want to talk about AI literacy. I made a proclamation, a little prediction, I guess, not a proclamation. I can't really proclaim the future since I'm not God, but I can predict, and my prediction was that 2025 would be the year of the AI agent. And so AI is here big time. Everybody knows that. But one of the other predictions I made in my last episode was that executives would have to go back to school in 2025. They would have to go back to AI school. And so AI literacy is super important here in 2025. And it's an area that you know extremely well. You've got an AI literacy course for executives. Let me ask you this. Why is AI literacy so important for executives in 2025?
Well, it's a really important question because AI is developing, as you know, very, very rapidly. And one thing about AI technology is it genuinely is very complex. It's very simple for us when we're sitting down with a chatbot and chatting with it. That seems very simple experience and a very simple interface. Behind the scenes, as you know and I know, there is a huge amount of complexity in these models. There's a huge amount of complexity in the services. This is a very technically demanding system. And yet the interface to it is quite simple and straightforward. How is an executive to know what is appropriate, what's possible, How are they to know when their IT department are kind of pulling the wool over their eyes a little bit, as IT departments are sometimes inclined to do? How do they know when an IT department is asking for too much or not being ambitious enough? How do they understand issues like risk and ethical exposure? How do they understand what are the likely upsides to AI? All of this requires an understanding not of the deep technology, but what I call AI literacy. They need to know enough to be able to make these executive decisions. We don't need them to become AI experts, but we need them to become AI literate so they can have those conversations, understand the outcome of those conversations, and make decisions with their business knowledge and their business insight allied with an AI literacy that enables them to be confident that what they're talking about is possible.
Yeah, it's funny because as an industry analyst, I cover artificial intelligence, but I can't keep up with what's going on, and that's my full-time job. So,
Right. Yeah.
to your point, it's moving so fast, it's impossible for executives to keep up. So they could use some help, some literacy. They need to understand the technology enough to be able to make decisions about it. And I have this belief too that it's important to get their AI literacy not just from software vendors, because I love software vendors are fantastic. They're making products that are useful for businesses. They're adding value to the company, to their customers, and we hear great stories all the time. But they also have a bent, and so I feel like there's a need too for AI literacy to come from disinterested third parties, right? Third parties who don't have a product to sell them. Do you agree with that?
I do absolutely. I think it's really important that there's a sort of independent view of what's going on in AI that people can absorb. And to your point, that software vendors have a bias towards, of course, their own products and towards their own interests. Software vendors build software to solve specific business problems or to be focused on specific business areas. And the truth is that AI is much more generic than that. AI is going to affect every area of our business. So if you're talking to a business intelligence vendor, that's fine. But what do you do about AI in your manufacturing processes and your operational processes? Or if you're talking to somebody who's doing AI and robotics on your shop floor, what does that tell you about the use of AI in your development of strategy and supply chain management? You need AI literacy in order to be able to look at the entire impact of AI across your enterprise. And vendors are always going to be focused on their specific area. And to your point, vendors are great. I think, by the way, software vendors have done a tremendous job of adapting to AI over the last 2, 3 years. I actually think this has been a great success story. But software vendors, by their nature, are focused on specific areas, and the impact of AI is going to be in every area.
Well, listen, we don't have time today to go into an entire AI literacy course, but I'm hoping that we can give executives and leaders, managers even, sort of a taste of AI literacy and what's in it. And from my perspective, the starting place is just to understand what is what in this crazy world of AI today. It seems like executives need to know, kind of at a base level, what's the difference between advanced analytics and machine learning and artificial intelligence. What's the difference between generative AI, general AI, and AI agents? And so at a base level, what do you think executives need to know about artificial intelligence and what it really is?
If you think of literacy, and the term literacy, I think, is very interesting because it relates directly to, traditional literacy, which is reading and writing and the ability to actually read and write. So literacy in the AI sense can actually be mapped to that quite carefully. There are three elements of literacy in my model, if you like. And one of the first elements is just having the vocabulary. Just knowing what the terms are, and as you say, there's lots of things that you need to know. You need to understand what it means. What is a model? What does it mean to train a model? What is inference? What does it mean to have, for example, RAG, RAG as an adjacency to a model? So all those sort of things, they're just some terms that you need to know in order to be able to work in this space. And then the other two parts of literacy, if you think of reading and writing, in our world, it's more like the ability to analyze them, not in order to read about AI and be able to understand what you're hearing. That's a really important part. How do I understand what's going on in AI? And that goes beyond the vocabulary. Needs to understand a little bit more of how all this pieces together. And then the third part, if you think in traditional literacy, there's vocabulary and there's reading and there's writing, and writing is creative and productive. And so we also need to be able to communicate about AI, which means we also have to be able to synthesize new ideas. For example, to be able to come up with strategies around AI. So if you are an executive, you need to have the vocabulary for AI. You need to be able to understand, say, what your IT teams or your analysts or your vendors are telling you. And from that, you need to be able to synthesize tactics and strategies that are going to take your business forward. And that's really the three elements of literacy as I see it: vocabulary, terminology, analysis, and synthesis of ideas.
So give me a primer, Corey. Give me the like 3-minute version. Give me 4 or 5 terms that you can define that you think executives will benefit from understanding.
Well, I think the very first thing to understand is what do we mean by an AI model? I think that's actually really important. And in all the AI systems that we have, whether they are generative AI systems, other analytic AI systems, predictive AI systems, models essentially are created in the same way. We have source data. And source data is incredibly important because that will define the quality of the model. The source data runs through an algorithm, which then detects in that data patterns and rules that it can use to make predictions for the future. The outcome of those patterns and rules, when you bring them all together into a set of patterns and a set of rules in a structured way, that is a model. So a model isn't the data, and a model isn't the output. The model is the set of rules and patterns that have been discovered by the training algorithm. And I think that's one of the key things we have to understand. A model is built from data by an algorithm. Change the data, the model changes. Change the algorithm over the same data, the model changes. And so we have to keep track of the data and the algorithm in order to keep track of the models. When you are a business user making decisions, you need to understand what is the value of this model, what data was it built over that I can rely on it, and what algorithm went into it. So now we've got three terms already there: data, algorithm, model, that are going to be really important for understanding what we do with AI. The fourth term that I think is really useful to understand is the idea of inference. And inference is what you do with a model when you present it with new information and ask it to make predictions or to generate new content based on the input you have given it, which could be in generative AI, we would call that the prompt. If it's an analytic AI or predictive AI, these would just be parameters that you put in. Based on that input, using your rules that have been trained by an algorithm over the model, what can you tell me? Or what can you create for me? And that is called inference. And so when we look at the AI system, we can see all the things that can go well. You can have great data, a great algorithm, a powerful model, and effective inferences because we're prompting or we're using the system well, the outcome is going to be great. If we have bad data, an ineffective algorithm, a poor model, and we use it badly with poor inferences, then we're going to get terrible outcome. It's garbage in, garbage out, but it's in many more levels. And if we understand AI in this way, understand the steps of what can go wrong and what can go right at each step, then we can proceed with much more confidence with that kind of basic level of understanding. And I often find in my AI training courses, if I spend just the first 30 minutes, sometimes an hour, just on that block of knowledge there that we've described in 2 minutes, then we can really move forward through the rest of the day or the 2-day course with a lot more confidence. And sometimes you kind of see the light bulb going on. Oh, that's what people are talking about when we're talking about this.
Want more Insight Jam? Follow us on Instagram for exclusive content like a daily dose of best practices and buying advice from industry experts and leading solution providers. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel for long-form highlights from our expert panel discussions. The Solutions Review team is hard at work collecting the best enterprise technology information from around the globe, so don't miss out.
Yeah, it seems to me like there's some common language kinds of things that it can help executives understand what these models can do, right? What can artificial intelligence do? Things like predictions, you've already mentioned. Forecasting is something that is common to every executive, especially those that are selling something. So they understand forecasting. There's recommendations. There are simulations. There are things like what if analysis. There is next best action, next best offer. So I think it's important for them to tie together some of the technical language of what's happening with the back to some of the possibilities of what can be done with artificial intelligence as well. Which brings me to the next question. When it comes to trying to figure out where do I invest in AI for my organization, or how do I find a quick win opportunity, something that where I can produce some value fairly quickly and it's lower risk. What kinds of things should executives be looking at to identify where to invest?
Yeah, I'm a great believer in quick win projects, and for a number of reasons. And first of all, they enable you to build up your muscle memory and your skills in dealing with AI. So you have a short, sharp, well-defined project, and it shouldn't be on a mission critical path, but it enables you to start building up those skills. That's really important. The fact that it's a short project means you see results easily and quickly, and they can be readily evaluated. And it's a really great way of discovering where your strengths and weaknesses are so you can decide where you need to make those extra investments. So I think I'm a great believer in quick win projects. And every time I speak to someone, I always say that there are three projects that almost any organization in the world can do straight away. And you can start on almost all three of these immediately. And the first one is understanding outliers. Every business that has data has outliers and exceptions. So outlier and exception analysis: is this an unusually high transaction? Is this unusually low? Is this looks like a really good candidate? Is this a very poor candidate? All this sort of thing. Outlier analysis is applicable in almost every business, applicable in almost every scenario, and you can think of it as a data quality issue, but it's a really valuable, short, simple to implement, and effective um, analysis that you can do with AI. Another one is time series, and you mentioned being able to do things like predictions and optimizations. Every business has data that changes over time. Could just be your daily sales, it could be temperature in your machines, it could be all sorts of things that you've got. But every business has data that changes over time. You can analyze that. You can discover trends. You can make predictions into the future, and that's tremendously valuable. It's remarkably easy to do nowadays with AI, and you might not be doing the most detailed time series analysis, but it's simple to do good, valuable time series analysis. Every business needs it. And then the third thing is that every business I know has documents. Every business I know has a ton of email, has a ton of manuals and codes of practice and documentation. And you can put those into GPT, into a large language model, and train it. And you can provide a natural language interface for your users, whether they are customers or clients or um, partners or internal staff, and you can give them a natural language experience so they can ask questions of that document. And that this is great for training, it's great for onboarding, it's great for building up perhaps customer service chatbots, but you can start from that. So every business has outliers, every business has time series, every business has documentation. You can build solutions for all of them quickly and easily with AI. And in doing those quick projects, you learn very easily where the gaps are in your knowledge and understanding, where the gaps are in your IT stack, and where the gaps are in your ability to apply it in your business. And then you can go on to your next projects and start investing to fill in those gaps and take you into the next generation of AI.
I had a conversation with an executive recently, and because he was trying to figure out exactly this, where do I make the investment? And I encouraged him to go talk to his IT organization or his IT leaders and find out where data is being produced as well, because that's another place that I think people should look is go find out the most data intensive business process that you have. And chances are you've been collecting data in those areas for a number of years. And that data becomes incredibly valuable towards feeding something that becomes predictive or even robotic. We've been doing robotic process automation for a while, and that was the foundation of that, right? Look for business processes that are data intensive. Make sure you've got the data. You probably have done the work to cleanse the data already, so it's usable, it's ready to go. That becomes a rich opportunity, I think, for artificial intelligence as well.
That's a great point. You make the really important point about the data is already cleansed and therefore ready to go. And we talked about software vendors earlier. If people really want to do a more substantial, rather than doing just a little quick win, if they want to do a more substantial project to start with, I often do tell them if they start with their business intelligence vendors that they're already using, most of those business intelligence vendors will have already invested quite a lot in integrating at least some AI into their products. And the advantage of taking a business intelligence led approach to artificial intelligence is precisely that the data has already been cleansed and normalized and prepared and consolidated and conformed for the BI stack. And therefore, it's in a really good position to be used for your first AI projects. It may not be the most advanced AI you can do, it may not be the most detailed, but it's actually going to take you over that first step of having to do all the data preparation because you've already built your data preparation processes and you've already built a lot of your governance processes in order to make it capable for business intelligence. So BI for AI is a really good place to start.
And I'd go so far as to say, too, that for a lot of the non-BI projects, having access to that structured data that is already cleansed, it's already governed, that adds intelligence to something that is normally just document-based or text-based generative AI kinds of interactions with chatbots and things like that. It gives it intelligence that you're not going to get from generative AI. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
it adds some intelligence to it. No question, right, that the opportunity right now is tremendous. Executives need to move forward. They need literacy. And one of the areas that they need literacy in is the potential risks. We're already starting to see headlines about, companies that are losing money because a chatbot offers their product for next to nothing because the person
Right.
knew the prompt to ask to be able to get the best deal possible, and the chatbot just gives them the best deal possible, and they've got to honor it. So there's risks. What are some of the risks that executives should be thinking about as they move forward?
Well, so I have a contrary view of this, and I'll try not to take too long to expand it. But I actually think looking at risks is really difficult because every new generation of a model can potentially bring you risks. And because model capabilities and because AI capabilities in general are moving so rapidly and developing so dramatically, it's almost impossible to keep up with the possible risks. So, what can we do about that? Well, I actually suggest turning the lens the other way around. And instead of looking at risks, we should look at vulnerabilities. Who are the people? What are the processes that are most likely to be affected by AI? And if we look at our customers, for example, we could say that there are customers who are vulnerable to being misled by AI, and there are customers who are vulnerable to making mistakes working with an AI system, and therefore we can focus on their vulnerabilities. Within our process, we can say what are the vulnerable processes? They may be pricing processes, they may be contractual processes. Our marketing processes aren't particularly vulnerable. Now, by focusing on vulnerabilities, there's a great advantage to that, which is that vulnerabilities don't change so much over time. Risks change with every iteration of the model, but vulnerabilities are still going to be vulnerabilities next year and the year after. So by focusing on vulnerabilities, you can create a much more stable view of the world. And then you can start to go into that and look at what are the potential risks to those vulnerabilities. And I'm a great believer in taking a vulnerability based approach precisely because that is more stable and more actionable than a risk based approach. If you take a risk based approach, you're going to be constantly chasing your tail because every new model, every new deployment, every new update to your system and to the underlying AI systems is going to introduce a new series of risks. That's why we're doing it. Vulnerabilities change on a much lower cycle. Does that make sense if I put it that way?
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. I'm not I can only wish to be as smart as you, Donald. Maybe in my next life, right? But I think of things in a very simple way, and to me, I think we understand the risks of our businesses. Executives know where the risks are, and they've already put guardrails on their business to avoid those risks. And some of them have to deal with humans. If you have an agent, an AI agent, for example, or an artificial intelligence, well, you should have the same guardrails on that that you would have if it was a person doing those tasks or projects within your organization. So
Think of them as a virtual team member. Yeah.
yeah, I think that there's a lot of fear that executives have because the risks are being publicized, right? And there's a lot of focus on and a lot of fear around that. But wow, just look at it the way you've been looking at your business, and treat it in a similar way. Now there's going to be nuances to that, but to me that's a simple way of thinking about it.
I think it's a very useful way of thinking about it. And I think you're especially right when we start to think of AI agents that can, to a certain extent, autonomously perform some operations for us. We need to start with them. And I think, we're aware that AI agents are going to become the dominant way in which we interact with AI in business, or at least in which AI is applied in business, beyond the chatbot experience. And so we need to think of ways of governing those agents and governing them as extensions of our existing teams and techniques and technologies I think is perfectly sensible way of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so similar to me. When social media first came out, people were there were experts that were telling people, well, this is how you use social media. And I said, well, why do I need an expert? I know how to build
Right.
relationships. It's what I've been doing all my life. It's the most important thing I have as a business person in my particular industry. It's the relationships. I know how to do that. I'm gonna do it the way I would if I was with somebody. And so it is similar in AI to think about what we have already been doing and bring that into the world of artificial intelligence.
I think so, yeah.
Solutions Review is inviting you to join InsightJam.com. What started a few years ago as a social media event to celebrate enterprise technology has now grown into an always-on tech community with live events, discussions, videos, vendor showcases, and industry resources. Our vetted roster of experts, thought leaders, and analysts are sharing tips and tricks daily. So if you're interested in getting involved, join the long list of companies and brands who have already participated by visiting InsightJam.com today.
Here's another question for you. I think that there's tremendous opportunity here. I think transformational opportunity, and the whole purpose of the Digital Analyst podcast is to make AI simple so people can understand it. We're doing that, and to be able to help people understand, how do I use these new technologies, data, analytics, analysis, artificial intelligence, generative AI agents. How do I use them now to dominate my market? Digital transformation has happened. It's done. And so, and if you're not digital now, you don't have the data, and this AI wave is hitting you. You're probably behind the curve, and you need to move incredibly fast. But assuming that you've become digital, now you have that data, you have the information. How does somebody use these technologies to really create a market advantage and to do something that really impacts the business in a transformational way? Do you have any thoughts about that?
I do, and it's difficult to be generic about these things. You might need to dig into some specific markets, but I think there are some generic kind of advantages that we can talk about. And clearly, one of them is optimization. The fact that we can find, using AI, we can find optimizations in processes. There have been an area of process mining which has existed for a number of years, and there's been areas of automation such as RPA, robotic process automation, which automates software-based processes. You bring those two things together, and there's a real opportunity of doing optimized processes within almost any business. And that's a fairly generic process. It can be applied in finance, it can be applied in supply chain, can be applied to a certain extent in marketing. So there are some sort of generic processes like that. But I think once you start getting specific about a business, take an example of a business which is not digitized at all, or very little digitized, would be something like construction. There's very little digitization in construction. It's still mostly men, mostly big burly men moving things around on construction sites and putting up buildings. And construction famously has got very little in the way of robots in there, even though you would think there might be some opportunities for that. And its back end processes are still largely paper based. There are many opportunities in a business like construction, not to necessarily come in and replace the big burly men with robots, but to actually come in and start to optimize their processes, including things like supply chain, which is always a big thing, and including the ordering and the contracting process, which can be now largely automated using LLMs, which can understand the detail of these massively complex documents that are behind every construction contract. Even if you've had work done in your house, you know this. The liens and the management of liens and the management of contracts is a really complex business. AI can help there. And then just simply the fact that in construction, a lot of labor is contract and a lot of outsourcing and a lot of third party providers, contractors that come in. Again, all that can be the management of all that can be improved with AI. So once you start, yes, there are some generic optimizations we can do, but once you start looking at any specific business, we don't necessarily need to look at replacing human processes, some of which cannot be replaced just now, but we can look at a lot of the work that goes on around that. And areas like supply chain, contracting, and the management of people is actually all really, really strong areas where AI can help.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep going down the same track and say, what about examples in the area of customer? Because I mean, historically, 60 or 70% of all the money spent on analytics is spent around customer relationships, whether it's sales, marketing, customer support, services. Any thoughts on how to transform customer relations using artificial intelligence?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you think of why are we spending that 60 to 70% on customers, on trying to understand our customers in particular, the things we're trying to understand are typically on the large scale. What are the patterns within our customers? What is the segmentation? Who's buying what? What is the buying process? How we can improve that? And then for the individual customer, it is what is this individual customer doing? When can I best talk to them? When can I best intervene? How is this deal going? Do I need to bring somebody else in? Can I make them a better offer as an individual customer? So there's the large scale generic analysis of customers in general. How do we understand them? And there's the very tightly focused, what can I do about this specific customer? One of the reasons we have this split is because it's been really difficult to take the large scale learnings and apply them to an individual customer. You end up being very generic and saying, well, this customer fits into this demographic, therefore I'll treat them in this particular way. Well, what we've seen over the years, and I think a really good example of that has been in e-commerce, where recommendation engines have become very, very focused on the needs of an individual customer. Now with AI, we have the capacity to do an analysis, not generically, of here are 3 or 4 groups of customers, here are 3 or 4 customer segmentations, but here are micro segmentations. We can actually treat each customer as an individual with an individual analysis of what's going to work for them, and we can market to them individually. We can effectively create individualized marketing campaigns and individualized sales processes that build on those campaigns in order to lead a single customer through the entire customer journey, one by one, at massive scale. Doesn't matter if you're Amazon or a small sort of contractor building kitchen cabinets who's got 100 customers. At any one of these levels, you can walk a single customer through the customer journey with an entirely customized process, and you can do that with AI in a way that you could never do it with even the most effective marketing analytics software previously.
It'll be so interesting. I think even in understanding the customer journey, I worked with one client where I basically rewrote 100 of their customer stories so that everything was consistent in terms of what was said about each customer, and it tracked the customer journey from beginning, in some of them for 10 years of purchases from this organization. And when we had that pros together in a single piece, we were able to then look at the customer journey in a way we'd never been able to see before. Well, I did that manually. I rewrote 100 stories. Well, today with generative AI, you should be able to just take a set of content and have it standardized according to customer journey and the way it's defined and put it all in there. So I think even in the understanding of customer journey, there's tremendous opportunity for people to see things about their customers and how their customers interact with them, what the customer likes, what the customer doesn't like, how their satisfaction and dissatisfaction goes up and down at different points throughout their relationship with the organization. I think tremendous opportunity there in terms of customer journey as well.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I recently did an analysis for a client, and they what we discovered was that customers dropping out of the journey, the number one point, the clearest drop off, if you like, in customer engagement was as soon as a salesperson became involved. First contact with a salesperson, the customer who has been reading marketing material and has been on the website suddenly drops off. And what we discovered there and what we kind of worked out was that that process was too early. And if, in fact, if we had a process where the customer could reach out to a salesperson and say, okay, now I need help, then that was great. But the salesperson intervening too early was really putting off customers. And what we were able to do to a certain extent with the AI was make that much more of a customer driven journey, that they were in control of it. And meanwhile, the AI was watching all the time and optimizing and enabling, for example, customer content, generating content on the fly and saying, this customer is really interested in this product. Um, why don't we generate more content about it? I'm very excited for this year, by the way, because this year, I think with that very same client, that content generation is going to include being able to generate customized videos, which we could share with every single client. AI generated videos about the product and about the product in their circumstances. And I think it's going to be very exciting being able to do that.
Yeah, tremendous potential, I think, this year, especially around customer relationship.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so I'm guessing, since we're talking about AI literacy, every executive needs to make decisions in 2025 regarding the AI literacy program for their company and for their executive teams. So, what kind of recommendations do you have as somebody is putting together a plan for 2025 AI literacy? What kinds of things should they be considering?
My number one piece of advice would be invest in people before you invest in the technology. Get your people up to speed. And that doesn't mean they need to be deeply trained. Some of your team will be deeply trained, but get your executives, get decision makers, and to a great extent, enroll as many people as you can in your organization, as many stakeholders as you can in improving their knowledge of AI, so that your organization is AI literate. The technology is coming. And the technology is getting simpler and better every day. So when you're ready, the technology will be there for you. Get your people ready. Invest in people. The technology investments will follow quite naturally. And your vendors are providing you with technology. There's new technology which is getting simpler and easier every day to use. So invest in people. The technology will follow.
Yeah, and I think that there probably is maybe a different set of training, right, as well for executives.
Mhm.
Executives need a specified training, AI
I
literacy
think that's
for.
very true. Yeah. No,
Um,
executive training is not just about AI literacy. It's also about how to make decisions around that. It's one thing to understand AI, but to be able to make decisions. We talked about understanding risk, and I have a vulnerability model rather than a risk model, but still it's the same risk management area. Executives need to understand all that, and that's really important for them. So they need to have a pretty good grasp of the technologies, but they really need to understand how to map the technological developments to areas of business impact, and that has actually taken quite a lot of work for them to be able to do it, because they have to be able to not only map it to existing business processes, but also imagine how those business processes will change in the future. They need to be able to innovate with AI, not just apply AI, and that's quite advanced training. And the kind of training that I do, it's the kind of training that I work with executives. It starts from the basics, but it has to get them to this point of being AI innovators. Otherwise, I feel I haven't given them the full value.
And I think the AI literacy as well for the employees, the individuals, it's part of HR's responsibility now to make sure that everybody understands how to use artificial intelligence in their job and what works, what is what is proper practice based on the values of our organization, what is not. It has to be done because everybody is using generative AI right now. And whether it's allowed or not in the company or sponsored by the company or not, they can flip open their phone while they're sitting at their desk and they can look at Gemini or Chat GPT or Anthropic Claude or whatever, and they can call that up and start doing something with it. They likely do it on their computer at work as well. So there has to be training that is made available for the employees in the company too. It's an HR responsibility.
It absolutely is. One of the things you hear a lot about in AI is resistance from employees. I perfectly understand that people are really concerned that AI will take their jobs, and for certain jobs that is clearly a risk. But for the vast majority of jobs, it's not. The people who actually understand how to apply AI in their jobs are often very confident that they can then do their job better with AI. AI and humans together are much better than AI or humans alone. And so if
Yeah.
you go into jobs like the call center operators who feel that they may be taken away by automated chatbots, a call center operator who really understands how AI can benefit them will be a much better operator. And they will get more advantage out of the system. Customers will be happier, and call center managers will see great improvements. And there's been plenty of studies that demonstrate this. Improving, providing AI training, even to the most junior roles, gives more confidence. It reduces resistance. It reduces the fear of AI, and it enables businesses to invest from the ground up. Rather than imposing AI onto an organization, it can develop organically within your business processes, which is a much healthier, much more productive, and much more sustainable way of developing that without huge disruptions to your business. So I'm a
Yeah.
great believer in applying AI training at every level of the organization, from executives who need it for strategy and tactics and decision making, right down to the most junior employees whose jobs may be directly affected by it. You can give them confidence and reduce the resistance if you give them AI training too.
Sign me up for your course, Donald. AI literacy for executives. It's like I'm ready. I don't know. I don't know if you do private engagements. I'll take a half a day of your time, and you can just walk me through it, and I will be AI literate.
That'll be one of those days when I learn more from my trainee than I do myself, which will be a great
Oh,
thing.
awesome. Well, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on the Digital Analyst. Uh, and fantastic to have you here. Hope to do this again sometime.
Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining our podcast today. If you haven't already, definitely like and subscribe. InsideJam.com and their YouTube channel. There's fantastic content there. If you want more information about me, go to ferraroconsulting.com. Best bet, find me on LinkedIn, John Santaferraro, and let's connect there. Let's have a conversation. Donald Farmer, amazing guy. You can find more information at his website. It's treehivestrategy.com. You'll find more information there about his course on AI literacy for executives. He's got tremendous amount of content, a blog. He writes regularly. He's somebody you want to follow and get to know. Thanks again for joining the Digital Analyst.